American made can actually mean a lot of different things, but the way Robinson builds their helicopters is unique and way more interesting than you'd imagine. At this huge factory in Torrance, California, Robinson Helicopter Company transforms raw materials into aircraft using a manufacturing strategy called vertical integration. It's an innovative approach that's allowed Robinson to grow into the world's largest producer of civilian helicopters while smartly avoiding many of the supply chain challenges that affect other aviation manufacturers. Vertical integration?
Yeah.
Can you give us a quick definition, just so we know what that is?
Sure. So the idea of a lot of folks take a component, an aircraft they deliver, and they buy things across a supply chain that's very distributed around the world, partners, suppliers, et cetera. We look at it very differently. Instead, every level down into the bill of material you go down, we can do that work. We can form that metal, we can cut that metal, we can process that metal, and we can get down into the very lowest level of detail, which is raw material. So usually castings, forgings, sheet metal, bar and plate, and manage it internally, so you don't have as many transactions. You can think about it as how much money is in blades going by. I always like to point these out as we go by. These are finished blades heading down for storage and delivery for customers, so they'll ship out in a few weeks, likely for those blades.
Helicopter blades are actually a good example of how vertical integration works. Basic resources enter the factory, then Robinson controls an array of manufacturing processes leading to a completed part. Let's follow along.
This is the root end of a blade. And the blanks look like this. This is how I can pick these up and show you. This is a forging, so a little different than a casting, but you can see it's kind of got all these rough seams and things where the molds are broken apart. You build a tremendous amount of volume at relatively low cost to build this, and there's a lot more work that goes in after this, so this is just one of probably 30 steps it goes through. So a blade spar comes in like this. You call it a D-spar because it looks like a D if you look at it at the right angle. So the D-spar goes the full length of the blade, but it has a lot of work that has to go in to cut the bonding plane and fastening holes throughout it. So there's a lot of mill work that goes on these machines. So these are finished spars that are going into polishing or coming out of polishing. But you can see it's got a lot of unique fastener holes and bosses, and of course it's scarfed at an angle, very specific. And then there's a ledge here, if you look on this side here. This is where the skins overlap and bond. So you cut all this on mills behind you. Lots of raw material here and on the racks behind too. And there's a constant flow for the mills to build more and more of these. Big racks of them here. These are interesting. These are blade doublers that are going on the main rotor blades. We cut a lot of blade skins here, and these all go into that skin build process. These are at the end of the process. Here are some of the prep for doublers that are gonna go into the bonding area. This is blade finishing. Actually, it's a good way to look at blades kind of as they're being, these are almost done. You can see a good profile of the blade with its tip cap cover off. But a lot of these blades also go through destructive specimens. So let me show you an example. So every blade that we build, we take multiple pieces of the blade and cut it off. That's actually the hacksawing you hear in the background. We do peel tests to verify that over multiple pulls that the bonding quality is at or above the spec that we set as a standard. And so we keep these for the life of the blade too, so we know for sure that it left the factory meeting the requirements, and it gives you a really great indication of bond integrity. What you're looking for is blue material on both sides, meaning that you destroyed, when you did the pull, you destroyed the adhesive, not pulled it off of a surface. Back, you can look at the blade racks. These blades are a really significant volume versus any of our competition. They just don't have blades on hand like we do. And we're constantly building between 50 and 70 blades per week so that we can feed both the fleet and give stock for future needs. Another thing I like to point out is, inventory is the ammunition for us in our big war against aircraft staying on the ground or not flying. So all the racks behind you there on the side of the left are all full of critical raw material, bearings or gear sets that are needed. When they're finished, they're ready to go. If we can, we're out producing, so we have some supply. Like I mentioned, roughly a 2-year supply on most things. That's a pretty hard number to stay ahead of. Some of the lead times for raw material have gone up considerably since the pandemic. Bearings alone are a 2-year lead time. So that means you got to carry a lot of material to be ahead of your curve. Right behind this curtain is the robotic sander that helps augment the staff on the manual sanding. So you can see in here, they're They're set up, but they're not running right now. But this can take and run 3 shifts, basically being fed by a handful of operations loading, and then it just runs and runs and runs. This is where we give birth to the helicopter for real. You know, it's up till here, it's a big old fancy piece of metal, you know. You can hear one coming in now. Yeah, that's a production R44 coming in for likely to track and balance and just testing. So we saw the Fukushima disaster and the tsunami in Japan crippled parts of automotive for a while. We had issues with the Suez Canal blockage just a couple of years back. Now we have the Strait of Hormuz blockage hitting other folks. We are invulnerable to those types of disruptions because we were designed with keeping it all local, having sources you can go visit and see. All those things have played a huge role in keeping us robust and resilient in supply chain through the pandemic and all the other periods.
What percentage of the aircraft is made in-house?
If you do it on an accounting of how much work from raw material goes into the stuff, we're north of 85% because almost everything that you see and touch comes in with very little energy to build it where it is, like rivets take almost nothing to make what they are, or they are us building everything, like gearboxes that are, a gearbox alone probably is, and a hydraulic servo, those are huge blocks of the percentage of the total work going into an aircraft. So yeah, we're at least 85% of the work that goes into an aircraft.
Touring the factory, it's clear Robinson Helicopter Company is an undeniable American success story, and it started with a guy named Frank Robinson who dreamed of opening helicopter flight to a much wider audience. The big takeaway? Frank's dream is thriving thanks to hard work, clever engineering, and a wise approach to manufacturing. More importantly, efficient large-scale manufacturing is still possible in America. In fact, it's happening right here in Torrance, California.